Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer was released for the GameCube, Xbox, and PlayStation 2 on September 16th of 2002. The game was developed by Treyarch, a company now more known today for the Call of Duty Black Ops series. Prior to this game, the company had developed several sports titles, including a few entries into the Triple-Play baseball series. Prior to working on Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, the company began doing some work on Activision's Tony Hawk Pro Skater series by developing ports of the first two games for the Dreamcast and the original Xbox. The game was published by Activision about a month before the release of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. At this point in the early 2000s, skateboarding and extreme sports games were at the peak of interest, with the genre slowly waning after 2003. It's pretty easy to see with the games Activision was publishing in the early 2000s that they were in a mad cash grab for extreme sports games, with sister games to the Tony Hawk series like Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX, Sean Palmer's Pro Snowboarder, and Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer. Activision's first name, last name, Pro Extreme Sport format stuck with each game, and each game has nearly the same logo. Surfing is a strange sport or activity to convert into a game. For instance, there were a few games that attempted it on the NES, like California Games and TNC Surf Design, but aside from these games and a few relatively unknown PlayStation titles like Championship Surfer or Sonny Garcia's Surfing, the genre really hasn't been explored too often. After Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer was released, there was really only two other contemporary surfing games, both which were licensed titles. The games are Surf's Up on the Wii, based on the film of the same name, and SpongeBob Surf and Skate Road Trip, which is a Kinect game on the 360. This makes Kelly Slater one of the most realistic surfing games released to date. The game's plot is delivered in a sports documentary fashion, similar to what you'd see in a Warren Miller film. This typically consists of a group of pro athletes that go on a world tour heading up the best locations on the way. The main plotline for Kelly Slater has you and a group of other surfers on a boat traveling the world and trying to catch the best waves. Other than that short intro when you start the game, anything else that could be considered plot is delivered at the start of each new area in an FMV clip.
If there's any such thing as extreme surfing, it's Mavericks. It's just a frightening place to surf. There's a whole lot more that goes into surfing big waves at Mavericks. The first strategy, you need to have a lot of nerve to take off on big waves and know you're not going to die.
Once you're done hearing the story of the area, you're off to surf. Each level has 5 goals, and every level has the same 2 score attack type goals, which are called Beat the Grom and Beat the Local. The rest of the goals depend on which level you're playing and can be anything from knocking over wakeboarders or jumping over a pier at a certain point on the level. Each level is timed, however if you wipe out or fall off your board, you'll have a chunk of time removed as a penalty. Although feeling drastically different than a Tony Hawk game, this game still has that feel of urgency when you're doing tricks. You want to make the biggest combo you can, however you don't want to waste it if you wipe out while you're doing it. The game has a similar control layout as a Tony Hawk game, with the A to jump and the rest of the buttons doing tricks. In this game, however, rather than grinding, you have the ability to hold down for a while and enter the pipe, which will send you into a balance mode, and the longer you stay up, the more points you'll be able to rack up. The rest of the tricks are either tricks that you do on the wave or tricks that you do in the air. If you chain too many tricks that you do on the wave without any air tricks, you'll speed up and eventually hit the wave's pipe, which will knock you off your board, so you have to balance what types of tricks you're doing all the time. The level design is completely different from any other extreme sports game, as it feels like a linear level that you're moving left on. If you never wiped out the entire time, the wave would just continuously push you left. While there are some obstacles that appear at certain parts of the level, you don't really feel like you have the ability to go towards them or approach them anyway, other than the way that the game has you moving. The moves, while fairly over the top, are fun to perform, and the game's camera actually works with you to make the combos and moves you're doing look cool. This is essential to the Tony Hawk extreme sports game experience. The downside of Pro Surfer is, unlike similar games in the genre, it's actually hard to end a combo. There were a number of times when I was done with a combo, but the game gives you just enough time to perform something else, but it also gives you enough time for a wave's pipe to catch up with you and knock you off your board, stealing the combo you just performed. Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer overall has some really fun gameplay. As long as you're willing to take the time to play through the tutorial levels, you'll get the hang of the game in no time. Outrunning the wave's pipe coming at you can be a challenge, however once you learn the controls and learn to work with the wave, you're able to perform some pretty sweet moves. Graphically, the game looks exactly like what it is, a 6th generation 3D extreme sports game. The water itself looks like a giant blob that's constantly coming at you as you ride it. However, the effects the game does to make the water look like it's being cut by the surfboard does look good, and it enhances the game's look a lot. The character models look like Tony Hawk models on surfboards, and there isn't much to say about the environment as it's always off in the distance. Overall, the graphics are kind of bland, and there just isn't much to them other than the wave, your character, and the occasional level-specific obstacle. The game's soundtrack, while not as hard-hitting as punk rock as many of the other Activision counterparts, is still not bad. It does feature a few surf rock tracks with a decent number of either mellow rock, trip hop, or hip hop tracks on the soundtrack. The music for the most part makes sense for when the game was developed, however I would have loved to hear more surf rock on the soundtrack. For a licensed music soundtrack it's okay, however in the end it's mostly forgettable. Overall, Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer is a fun arcade-style surfing game and is probably one of the best surfing games of all time. The game is fairly difficult and unforgiving, however extremely rewarding when you're able to pull off a really nice run. Nothing really stands out with the graphics and audio, but the gameplay manages to carry the game. Although starkly different from other skateboarding and BMX games, the game does capture the thrilling nature of scoring fat combos and seeing cool moves. Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer is without a doubt a game worth checking out if you're into similar extreme sports games.